Greetings, Legionnaires! Today I'll be discussing a game I've been waiting for a heck of a long time, and that is Cyberpunk 2077. As with all my reviews, I like to start by going over a spoiler-free plot synopsis, and then talk about the highlights and the shortcomings. So, let's get to it! You play as V, and you actually get to choose your starting point, so the prologue of this game has you pick either Nomad, Corpo, or Street Kid. Now, that's only the first little bit of the game, and all of those kind of stories tend to merge at a certain point within the actual game itself, and then you pretty much just play the game that everybody's going to play anyway. It's not like if you chose Corpo in the beginning, it's going to be vastly different than if you chose Nomad, for example. However, if you do choose those different kind of beginnings, you will have different dialogue options, which might allow you to kind of use your knowledge of these various worlds to your advantage, potentially. Anyway, throughout this, you kind of go through Night City, you kind of work your way up these kind of like criminal activities, and eventually come into contact with a personality that has been gone for about 50 years, known as Johnny Silverhand. Basically what happens, Johnny has now infected your mind, and it is up to you guys to kind of work together to prevent him from inadvertently taking over your body and killing you. And that's pretty much the main plot of the game. Let's put our best foot forward and let's talk about the highlights. Alright, so first thing I want to talk about here is the world itself. I think Night City is really interesting, especially kind of driving through it, looking at all the stuff that you can do. There is so much here, and you can tell that they really went to some great lengths to make Night City interesting, especially visually, because this game is going to pull from a lot of things that people know and love. Famous, films, especially from the 80s, so if there's things that you're drawn to in that, there's probably a lot in here that you will enjoy as well. Another thing I want to start off with talking about too is to kind of build out that world is the music within it on the various radio stations, and that kind of permeates everything that you do. The music in this game I really enjoy. There is a lot of different music though, it's not just synth stuff all the time. There's like a jazz radio station. The one that I listen to the most is Ritual, because that's like the most hardcore heavy stuff, and when I'm driving around Night City, that's kind of what I like to be banging my head to, but that's just kind of a personal taste thing. But the lengths they went to for the music, I just love it. I think it's super, super good, and something that is a really big part of not only the world, but also the story of Johnny Silverhand. And we should probably talk about him just a little bit as well. I really like Keanu Reeves in this game. I like Keanu Reeves just separately from this, but at the same time I was kind of nervous because I was like, man, you put somebody that high profile in a game like this, and they might take you out of the experience a lot of the time. I actually never really felt that too much. I think he really does a good job of playing that character, and for people who are familiar with Arkham Knight, he plays a lot like the Joker does in that game, if you're familiar. So Johnny's popping up everywhere. I didn't realize how much he was going to be in this game until I got into it, and I was like, wow, he is showing up all the time. So keep that in mind if you aren't a huge Keanu Reeves fan, which I'm not sure if any people exist that way, but if you are, just in case you are, just keep that in mind because there is a lot of him in this game, and I really like him. And his kind of backstory as being Johnny Silverhand, this kind of famous rock star, does play a pretty big factor within the game, and at least like a side quest or two or a mission or two that you can indulge in, or you don't have to, but you have to keep that in mind too. But Johnny Silverhand was not just a rock star, he was also kind of like an eco-terrorist, so he's a little more complex than maybe you'd think at first blush. I do want to talk about the combat as well. I think it's solid. It's always interesting to see a group transition from doing one perspective of games to another, and by that I mean CD Projekt Red moving from something like The Witcher, which is a third-person action game, into Cyberpunk, which is a first-person shooter for the most part. And the guns feel really nice. I didn't indulge in all of them all the time. Like, I kind of started the game off with like assault rifles and shotguns and stuff, but eventually I moved more to the pistols, the sniper rifles, which the sniper rifles sound and like they feel really good to me anyway, especially the ones without the suppressors. The suppressors are great, but there's something about the snipers that when you fire them, especially when you're out like kind of in the desert, like you can hear it. It sounds so great. But I actually used a katana a lot, which probably seems really stupid in a first-person shooter. However, I was able to level my character up and V into such a way that he could really move in and like destroy almost anybody, especially people who were much higher level than me with the little red skulls above their head, because this is an RPG after all. I could cut through almost everybody pretty easily. And there's a few times my biggest fear or enemy were explosives or explosions that would happen if I accidentally hit like an explosive barrel or something, or somebody shot something that was right next to it, because that would like take me out instantly, no matter how strong I got in the game. But I liked my katana a lot. Yeah, that's kind of what I leveled up into, along with, so I did strength and reflexes. And this is another thing that I enjoyed about this game, because they kind of retooled the system a few different times with, out throughout the development of the game to kind of show off what your character could be built into. And the system here, it's kind of a different type of skill tree, because what you do is, for those who played like Skyrim or something, if you jump a lot or run a lot or use your fists a lot, you will build up like athletics. And that will build up naturally over time. However, when you level up, you'll get an attribute point and a skill point usually. The attribute point will go into one of like 5 different like little areas that can kind of bolster you in a different way. So if you put it more into strength, you will also get like some minor, like you might get a little more health and a little more, like you'll get +1 more to just strength checks. If you're trying to rip open a door, you'll have a better chance. If it's like a door that's, requires a 9 strength and you're only at 8, you're going to have to level that up to 9 to actually rip the door open. Which, that was okay. The thing that got a little confusing about that is like you go into these kind of, I call them skill trees, they're not really, they're almost like a skill grid. And some of the things that you're trying to acquire would say like, well, your character, your V, he needs an 11 in blades first, but it's not an 11 in reflexes, even though blades is like a subheading to the reflexes attribute point. It gets a little confusing, but once you get into it, it's not too bad. You just kind of have to look far enough into the skill tree to see like, all right, what do I need to put my attribute points into? And then also, what do I need to just be using a lot in order to unlock the ability to acquire something later on? I thought it was kind of cool, but I could see where a little bit of a double-edged sword. I'm so sorry. I was using the katana a lot. Forgive me. Another thing that I really enjoyed about the game, though, were the story levels. I think those ones are where it is firing on all cylinders. I think that there's, the music's there, the compelling narrative is there, and the missions themselves are a bit more interesting, or the places you actually get involved with. I won't spoil them here, but there were a few where I was like, oh, this is really cool, or how are they going to tackle this? And when I was going through, I was like, okay, maybe it's not as complex as I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, I enjoyed it. I was like, okay, sure, this makes sense, and there's a few kind of more cinematic story moments that I was like, oh, this is really cool, and I wanted more of that. I was like, this is sweet, especially some of the stuff earlier on in the game. I was like, yes, I really, really dig that. And also the characters. We talked about Johnny Silverhand, but the other characters in the game are ones that I really got attached to. There's one early on, Jackie, that I really like, and I would love to have seen more of him. But there are other ones such as like Pan Am, Judy, broke my heart, and Vic Vector, he's like your Ripper Doc. He's like the guy who's going to give you like your cyberware upgrades and stuff. And you can actually meet other Ripper Docs throughout the world, which I thought was really cool, and they're all like pretty different and different backstories and different inventories. That stuff was really neat. But Vic Vector, I liked him. I personally liked him a lot. Misty obviously is up there too. I enjoyed Misty. She was a little bit of she provided a different perspective in Night City than I was anticipating. But yeah, it was cool. And some of the side quest stuff can be interesting. There's like some side characters you meet for just a little while and you're like, this is really crazy. Like, it's not something I expected to see in the game, so I appreciated that stuff. However, as much as I want to sit here and laud this game and say it is the greatest game we've ever seen, and it's totally worth the wait, the hype, and the expectation, unfortunately, it does have a lot of issues. Now, I'm not the first reviewer to say this. I'm sure I've not really watched other reviews on this, but I feel like I've kind of heard little rumblings here and there, and obviously these come out a little bit later because we don't get the advanced copies and all that stuff, and I want to take my time and really dissect this game for you guys, but the game, I don't want to say it was rushed, because it's been in development for such a long time, but it does have a lot of bugs. You've been seeing me play the game in the background here, and there was a moment back there for a while that I found the other day during a stream, that there was a palm tree that was, and this is one of the minor bugs, but it was like bending over in the wind, and then it would bend way over, and then it would go like two-dimensional. So that's kind of a funny bug. You know what? In open world games, that kind of stuff happens. You see T-posing enemies in this game, you see clipping, you see a bunch of stuff, people disappearing, whatever, and then you take it up a step further. Your field of view in this game, you'll be looking at something, and if you turn too quickly, then you might find a car that has to do like a texture pop-in, which can be kind of egregious, and you're like, okay, that's a little bit weird. And I've been playing this on the Xbox Series X, one of the consoles that it's supposedly more optimized for, potentially. So, you go a step further, and you turn away, and you look back at the car, and it's turned into a completely different car. Alright, that's, again, maybe more of like a minor gripe. Not that big of a deal, okay? It's just kind of like a funny thing. It's kind of weird. Then you take it a step further. The other day, while I was streaming, I was running around the world, people were watching, and my character, he was walking on a road, and he vanished. It went black, and then I was in the ocean. I was in the bay. I don't know how I teleported. I don't know how I gained the ability to teleport. I would like to use it more efficiently. It's like the movie Jumper. And I had to like swim back to a ladder to climb back up, and it was pretty far away from where I had gone from, which was very strange. That kind of stuff is very odd. I've heard of other people potentially having game-breaking bugs, which to me, game-breaking usually means like if you're doing a story mission and you have to get in a car and go somewhere, the car just keeps exploding. That's kind of game-breaking because you can't progress past that point. I personally on Series X have had about 6 or so full crashes within the game, which means that I've been kicked right back to like the Xbox home screen or whatever. I've also had a few times where the game just completely freezes and pauses, and I have to wait for a few seconds, and then it can be played again. It feels like the game is like almost at that point where it's still in development, and it feels like kind of almost QA test-ish, where it's like you can play the whole game, but there are still issues in it, and there's just kind of some weird bugginess that I did not expect to see from CD Projekt Red, which is kind of surprising. I kind of wish they could have delayed it another year, and I don't know, it just seems odd. Another thing about this is I talked about the world, and I really enjoy the aesthetics of it to an extent, and the music and how they kind of flesh it all out. But even though they have a bunch of NPCs kind of walking around and stuff, I can't help but feel this certain hollowness to the whole thing. There's something about it that it doesn't feel alive in the way I thought it might. Because I remember seeing these other E3 trailers and, these kind of demos of it, and thinking, wow, this place feels like, oh, you're going to get lost in this world. And you don't, or at least I didn't. I found the whole story and everything to be really breezy, and I got through the whole game in about 45-ish hours, which sounds like a lot. But for a game like this, that is That's not a ton. That's not as long as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be much more compelling and life-consuming as opposed to what it was. And again, that hollowness kind of rings out where you're just kind of walking around. And I had a lot of times, too, where in the beginning of the game especially, there were no cars or people walking around. And they've been patching it a lot. But I'd have to stop and then wait a few seconds and then turn around. And then there would be tons of people and cars and stuff. It was like, wait, what? So the world doesn't feel alive to the extent that I thought it would. There are areas where it does feel a bit better, where you're walking around, you'll see like a street musician performing and things, and you like, oh, look, there's these people who are, there's a bunch of people cooking food and everything. But even that, you can't, like, you can sit down and order food from them, but it's just through an inventory screen. You're not like eating that food, which I kind of thought you would be. Again, maybe this is like a weird gripe that only I have, but I wanted that to be in there. I talked about the side missions also before. I don't think the side missions are super compelling, especially the ones that are just kind of popping up on the map. There's a lot of like, go kill this person or go sabotage this thing. It's fine. It just doesn't feel the same way. It doesn't feel as compelling as I think it should. And there are some other actual side quests that are interesting, but they're kind of weird. And when I was done with them, it was just kind of like, yep, you're done, bye. Like, these people you met, they're gone. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I don't know, it seems odd to me, and the reason I bring that up is because you have these people who constantly give you side jobs and gigs and stuff. They're these fixers, as they're called, throughout the world. And they'll call you when you go into different territories and stuff, and you can actually go physically meet with these people. But the side quest characters, like the ones you meet that you do a few missions with, those people are like, I don't know if I can go find them again. It's maybe not that big of a deal, but it feels weird to have the ability to go meet up with these like fixers and like talk to them, and these other people that I've done like these crazy missions with, it's like it almost feels like they're gone. I don't know if they are still around, or even like if you have a romantic relationship with somebody, it's like that happens and it's just done. And it's like you go and like talk to them, or you can call them, and there's like there's no more. It's done. Like you there's not much more until the very end that you can like engage with them, and I felt like that was really strange. It's like, okay. Yeah, I don't know, I was just expecting more, and maybe that's my own fault for having that kind of expectation. This is also a game that has what I like to call the cross-gen compromise. A lot of people like to say this is like a next-gen game, and I thought it was too, but because it launched not only on Series X and PlayStation 5 and PC, but because it also launched on Google Stadia, and it also launched on Xbox One and PS4, I think trying to optimize it for everything means that all versions of it were compromised, and that hurts me, because it's like, I wanted it to just be fully into the next gen, which again is very selfish. And one of the reasons I got my Series X early on is because I wanted to play this game, and I was hoping it'd be kind of the best version of it, and it might be one of the better versions of it, but still, I'm like, there's still issues with it, and I don't know if I should attribute that to it being launched on 8 different platforms simultaneously, 8 or 9 or whatever it was. And I also feel like the story was a bit rushed too, and it's kind of unfair, because like nothing can be compared to just being in a vacuum, you know what I mean? Like, all pieces of art are compared to each other. But Witcher 3 felt like a huge story that just got bigger and bigger. This game, I thought, okay, maybe they'll compromise and make shorter stories because there are 3 different life paths to choose. But really, those life paths are only meaningful in the very beginning of the game, and that's about it. I don't think having my corpo background really benefited me in conversations, even though I could use it. It didn't seem like it opened up any other options for me, which was kind of disappointing. I was like, okay, I would see it if you made like 3, like obviously the game has to be similar throughout for everybody, but I wanted it to be different enough that made me want to go back and play as the nomad, play as the street kid, but I don't really care to do that, because it's like, I don't know how much different it's going to be, or if I like respec my character into something different, or change and make a different character. I don't know. Basically it comes down to this. I'm just hurt. I'm just like a little depressed. Like, it's not a bad game. It really isn't. And I guess that kind of gets to the conclusion of the thing. It's not bad. It's enjoyable. There's a lot to like in this. I enjoy, what Night City is, and all those things we talked about before, like the music. I like Johnny Silverhand. The combat's pretty good. but there's so many bugs, and I feel like it's kind of hollow in a certain way that I wasn't expecting it to be, and I thought this was going to be such like this grand, amazing, like, wow, this is a full crazy RPG, and it isn't. I really do think, though, in 6 months or a year from now, we're going to see this game come back in a big way. They've talked about doing multiplayer of some sort. I don't know exactly what that's going to be. If that's going to be co-op or whatever else. I'm interested in that, though, for sure. But right now, if anybody's on the fence about this, I would say wait. Just wait a little bit and come back. Even if you bought it right now, or bought it, maybe just wait for just a few months so the patches can come through, and maybe that will help alleviate some of the problems. I did get a question here from our Legionnaires, and I want to start doing this in the reviews because I think it's kind of fun. But this one comes in from Zor Caviar, or Caden, over on Discord. He said, were there any aspects of the game that particularly felt next-gen to you? The thing that I would say that is how the NPCs interact with you during your they're not cutscenes, but how you talk to them or how they interact with one another. There's something about the facial animations in this game, and obviously there are other games that probably do it better in like the kind of the cutscenes and stuff. But there's something when you sit down with people in this game to have a conversation. There's something really compelling about it. That stuff felt a little more next gen to me. Besides that, though, nothing else really did, unfortunately, which is too bad because I think this game is really ambitious and I really can't wait to see the full-fledged version of this one day, because I still feel like this isn't the true Cyberpunk 2077. So I'm really hoping, and I'm pulling for CD Projekt Red because I know so many people worked so hard in this game for so many years, and I want that to shine through. I really do. But like I said, again, if you've gotten this game or you're on the fence, I'd say just wait a little bit, let them patch some of this, kind of the problems out, and I think in 6 months, a year from now, this will be a true, strong game, and then I can be able to recommend it just willingly. But right now, I'm kind of like, I'm a little hesitant. Maybe not. Just maybe wait on that. I just want to thank you guys so much for waiting to see this review. I appreciate it. I know we're not the first review to be out there, but at the same time, I thank you so much. And if you want to support the show, the best way you can do so is just comment. Just let me know that you're watching. That would help a lot. I always ask for people to to do all those things on YouTube, but that would be the best thing. Sharing helps too, but I feel like I just keep forcing people to do that. So only do that if you really want to. If you're into Instagram or TikTok, we do post stuff over there too. So if you do want to check that out, or it's kind of updates for things potentially if you missed them, that's a great place to check that stuff out. We have a Spreadshirt if you want to get a shirt with some cool Critical Reviews merchandise. I'm not wearing one of those right now. I'm just wearing my Itachi because he's like Samurai, like the band, you see? That's what I'm trying to pull together here. But anyway, also a huge thank you to the people who brought you this show, who produced this show, which are our patrons. Thank you so much, patrons. You guys don't know how much it means to me that people are still, putting money towards this and supporting the show. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. And if you're at $5 and up, you get your name here at the end, along with podcasts early and stuff like that. Yeah, man, I just appreciate it so much. And seriously, I want to know what you guys would like to see in the coming year. If you want more reviews like this, if you're kind of done with reviews, I know the channel is a hodgepodge, but I honestly want to hear back from you guys. What you like, what you don't like, and all that jazz. But I wanted to come here and talk about Cyberpunk 2077 because it was my most anticipated game of the year, and it unfortunately is not what I was hoping it would be. Unfortunately, but that's okay, because sometimes that happens, and we gotta hope and be optimistic for the future. Alright, excellent. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your year, or whenever you're watching this, and take care. And just remember, until next time, to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye.